And you actually went up against Ken Starr's team. So maybe you could tell people what that was like, because people here thought that he was a crazed, out of control guy. Like I think that was the view.
Well, there was actually that case, part of it was there was a religious angle to that case. Kenneth Starr is he went to a very strong sort of evangelical college in Arkansas, of all places. He has a very, very strong sort of moral background of any kind of thing that involves extramarital sex or whatever is going to be, it's as bad as, a crime you can commit. And in truth, that drove a lot of it, because the people around him he hired, we knew 2 or 3 of the lawyers, there was that same sort of feeling. So the concept for most of the world looked at this and like, well, we kind of hope the president's getting some sex because it'll calm him down and keep him reasonable, and we don't have a problem with it. But there was this group that really he was, to his credit, this wasn't a political thing where he was trying to get ahead or get appointed or whatever. I think he genuinely was offended by the fact that the president had sex with somebody, and it was almost like a personal thing, and he took it very, very personally. Susan McDougal refused to testify, and he couldn't figure that out for the life of him. Why in the world she wouldn't testify? It just drove him absolutely crazy. To the point where they came up with a scheme. They thought, okay, she's been in prison for, at that point she'd been in 17 or 18 months. And they came up with a scheme because their thinking was sort of Wally Cleaver in 1950s, that, what we'll do is to get her to talk. We've got this really handsome U.S. attorney who all the women fawn over. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send him into that jail, and we're going to have him talk to her. And, she's been in jail for a long time, so she'll probably, a handsome man, she'll probably talk to him, right? Okay? So they tell Mark and I that they're going to send this guy in, and we know him. We know his reputation. He was a ladies' man. And we know his reputation, so we tell Susan, and Susan's like, oh, yeah, send him in. I can't wait to see what he can do. I mean, I'm behind glass, okay? I want to see what charms he has that he's going to be able to, charm me behind glass. And so she said, no, don't even bother to send him in. But then the interesting thing was when Monica Lewinsky, when they brought her in and they were interviewing in the hotel room, guess what attorney they flew out? Same thing. They thought, we'll get, young girl, we'll get this handsome guy. And the funny story is, after he interviewed her for like 2 hours, she had one request in the future: never bring him in again. Okay, keep him away. So it was just a different mindset. And again, I don't want to overly give them credit, but I think they were genuinely offended by it.
You went to trial.
We had a trial in Arkansas for Susan where she was charged with criminal contempt and obstruction of justice for refusing to testify, which she was 100% guilty of. I mean, there was no question. And the only thing we were looking for possibility was jury nullification. So we had to try at least to get as many Clinton sympathizers and Democrats on the jury as we could. Starr and the independent counsel hired a jury consultant and paid him, it's amazing, they paid him 6 figures, $100,000 to come in and pick the jury. Unfortunately, it was somebody from Washington, D.C. I grew up in Arkansas, and I looked at the jury questionnaires, and I could tell, for example, one of the questions we put on there was, what newspaper do you read? And I knew if anybody wrote the Arkansas Times on there, that they were a Democrat. I knew that, because only Democrats read the Arkansas Times. I knew that, for example, specific politicians we put on there, how do you think of this person? And there was some confusion over a couple of them, but I knew where people would stand on it. So it was very easy for me to pick that jury because I'd grown up there. And I knew a lot of the
You tell the jurors you were a criminal defense liar?
Down there, they think this is normal. So it's, I'll tell you one funny story. I was in Michigan at law school, and I did an oral argument in front of 3 judges. They brought 3 judges from Ann Arbor in to do the judging on it. And I was pretty proud of myself. I thought I did a pretty good argument. And the first 2 judges are, yeah, you did a good job. They're praising me. The third is a woman, and she looks at me and she goes, I don't know where you think that Matlock crap is going to work, but I can tell you it's not going to work in the courtroom. I was devastated. I was like, really? This is how I talk. I swear. She thought I was making the whole, I was really exaggerating. But the really thing they wanted was for her to testify she had had a sexual relationship with Bill Clinton. They were obsessed with sex. I mean, they really were. To the point.
Unlike everybody else.
Exactly. They were obsessed with it in a different way. Let's put it that way. They actually, one of the great stories of that trial, there was a woman named Claudia Riley. And Claudia Riley was like the dean in Arkansas of women in politics. Her husband had been governor, and she was a wonderful, charming lady. And at the trial, by the time she was the trial, she was somewhere probably 74, 75. She happened to be Susan's best friend. And so she came into the trial as a witness for us and testified to a couple of things about Susan and what had happened, because she had accompanied Susan on a couple of things. We take a break. Mark and I go out and we're going to get a Coke or whatever, and we come back, and the prosecutor is sitting down talking to Claudia Riley. And so, Carl starts up again, and before we go back in, I said to her, "What did she ask you?" She looked stunned, and she said, "They were asking me if I'd had sex with Bill Clinton." And so the first question, I got up, we went back, I said, "Did you just speak with the prosecutor in the hall?" She said, "Yes." I said, "What did she ask you?" She said, "She wanted to know if I'd had sex with Bill Clinton." And the whole jury, you could just see them going, "Oh, good Lord." And I said, "What did you say?" And she said, "I never had that privilege. I wish I had." She was great. She was terrific. But they were really obsessed with it. And so, yes, they wanted to proffer. They would do anything if she just basically said that she slept with him. And then later, when she refused, then they wanted something on Hillary. Then they started hitting her up about, just say something on Hillary that she had done something wrong. So that's how it ended up. Crazy times.